federal law enforcement lapses or policy choices, probably a better description. It's not a lapse if it's intentional. Impacting local communities. We've been talking the last week or so about Springfield, Ohio in particular, about Aurora, Colorado, about Whitewater, Wisconsin, about Charleroi, Pennsylvania. Well, now add Arondakit, New York. Here is the police chief there, Scott Peters, on the murder of 4 people, 2 adults, 2 children. The alleged assailant is a Dominican in this country illegally who's wanted for a 2019 murder in the Dominican Republic.
I know you guys have questions. This was a horrific scene. In almost 32 years of doing this job, I've never seen anything like it. So,
local news covering the vigil that was held outside the home where those young adults and 2 toddlers basically were murdered.
Today we don't say goodbye, we say until we meet again. Because the Lord allows us to meet them one more time.
Tonight's vigil for the family found dead on Knapp Avenue Saturday, led by prayer.
In the midst of what's going on and this sad tragedy, we can assure you that we have a God who's willing and able to bring us a comfort in a time of need.
Family and friends of 30-year-old Freme Ubaldo, 26-year-old Marangeli Moreno Santiago, 4-year-old Evangeline Ubaldo Moreno, and 2-year-old Sebastian Ubaldo Moreno, emotional as they continue to come to terms with the unexpected death. Arundecoit police responded to the home for a fire. When crews went inside after, that's when they found the 4 bodies. The police chief called it a homicide, one of the worst he's seen in his career.
Right. So it's not primarily about cats and geese this just in. It's primarily about people and people that are being victimized, including those 4 people of color, not just suburban honkies with a NIMBY issue. Yeah. As well as communities that are just overwhelmed. Back to Charleroi, Pennsylvania, and Councilman Larry Seleshki there.
You know, the sad part about all this thing, and honestly, I don't care. I'll shoot straight from the hip. Frankly, I wish I could come face to face for 60 seconds, okay, with whoever was behind all this and bringing the immigrants in to Charleroi for only one reason. Where the hell's the money should be coming to Charleroi? Okay, why was it all dumped on us and we're not being funded with anything? Okay, and again, we can't even meet ends meet with our budget. And so now, where are we going to get this extra revenue to pay for them? You know, and then we've got to do all these things to accommodate the immigrants. That's
it's bull jive. Yeah, there's nothing to do with race or even these sort of phony debates about the local animal population. By the way, J.D. Vance, who was making the rounds on the Sunday talkies, you know, he was on this issue back in July, specifically with respect to Springfield, Ohio,
right,
his constituents, but nobody was paying attention then like they are now. But he was trying to raise the specter of the impact on small communities that open borders is having.
Chairman Brown, I'd like to ask unanimous consent to submit a letter for the record from the city of Springfield and our state, the southwestern part of our state, which I think highlights a very real example of this particular concern, straight from the horse's mouth itself. Now, this letter, I want to quote from it. Springfield has seen a surge in population through immigration that has significantly impacted our ability as a community to produce enough housing opportunities for all. Springfield's Haitian population has increased 15 to 20,000 over the last 4 years in a community of under 60,000 previous residents, putting a significant strain on our resources and ability to provide ample housing for all of our residents. And end quote there. And Mike.
No objection. So
thank you. In my conversations with folks in Springfield, it's not just housing. They're trying to build 5,000 new housing units, which is a very Herculean task in a town of about 55,000 people. But it's also hospital services, it's school services, there are a whole host of ways in which this immigration problem, I think, is having very real human consequences.
Mm-hmm. Those real human consequences that the D.C. press corps is anxious to avoid discussing.
Well, they're debunking everything.
Here's another real-world consequence. There's a former ICE director who was stationed in Colorado, now running for Congress there. And he's talking about what's happening in Aurora, Colorado. There's about to be a big gang war, said John Fabricatori, former director of ICE for Colorado. He's talking about Tren de Aragua, the Venezuelan gang. I believe they're setting up their network right now. These guys are setting up faster than MS-13 did. They're getting into these apartment complexes, and what they're doing is starting with prostitution. He goes on to say prostitution is a big moneymaker, and the thing with prostitution is that it brings guys in that they can sell dope to. These guys come in, they meet these Johns and shake them down, see if they want to buy drugs. They've started with moving these girls through, and if you go in these apartments, you'll see these young girls. It's bad.
Sex trafficking, yes.
Yeah, but it's also that he is expecting a significant gang war. And again, a significant gang war of gangs that have international reach. And the Aurora, Colorado Police Department is supposed to be able to address that. I mean, ostensibly in conjunction with federal law enforcement, but we see the in conjunction with federal law enforcement is sort of spotty these days, don't we? For more on this, Thomas Weitzel joins us now. He's a retired chief of police for the village of Riverside, Illinois. Thomas Weitzel, thanks for being with us again. Appreciate it.
Hey, good morning. Thank you for having me.
What's your reaction? I mean, put yourself since you were in this position, the position of the police chief in Aurora or Charleroi or Springfield. What would you be saying and doing?
Well, first, I definitely agree with everything that was said there. You'd be overwhelmed with as far as police services go. You wouldn't have the resources to do what the added criminal element is doing. And you'd look at like your budget. You'd be under pressure from the city already. You'd be under pressure from your city village manager already. You would have trying to get federal resources to help, and that always doesn't happen. And many times these communities are prevented from even accessing federal resources, depending on what your government is like, where you're policing. So, here in Chicago and Illinois, we're prevented from accessing databases for ICE. You're probably well aware of that. And you're listening. So we don't even know who these individuals are. I mean, think about it. When you're taking them into custody, they lie. They pretend they don't speak English, and they probably don't. They're gang members. Most police agencies identify through fingerprints. Well, you're not even getting the real identity if you can't access the federal database. You don't know who they are because they haven't been arrested in Aurora, Colorado probably before, or they haven't been arrested in Illinois before. So it's very difficult.
Well, what do ICE agents do in sanctuary cities and sanctuary states?
Not much. So,
yeah.
The way it's supposed to work is you're supposed to they put the detainers, which is their version of a arrest warrant. It's a civil process. And then if you pick somebody up on an unrelated crime, so say you arrest someone DUI, they got an ICE detainer. That ICE detainer pops in the system. You call ICE, and when that individual goes to bond court, or in this case in Illinois now, goes for a pre-detention hearing, they lodge that so that even if the judge allows that individual to walk out the door or put him on EM, ICE will detain them. That doesn't happen in Illinois. In fact, officers have been disciplined for even reaching out to ICE, off the record. And if you don't think that's happened, it has. Because police officers run across somebody where the crime is that violent and this individual has a detainer for a really violent crime. I know Dan mentioned earlier a homicide that was an individual was wanted for a homicide outside the country. That's happened. If you don't think the officers are reaching out to ICE underneath and saying, hey, you might want to go grab this guy or this is the last known address, they are doing that.
But you're right. I mean, but the key point that you made in terms of not knowing who these people are, but then you have civilian political authorities, like in the state of Illinois, who don't want to know who they are and don't want you to, and frankly, don't want you to know who they are. Just avert your eyes is the approach they take.
You're right, and that's all for political reasons, right? They want the police not to act. You know, there was a case. If you don't think it, in Lake County, they arrested some gang members from out of, I think it was Honduras, and in their pockets they had a permission to kill police officers. You know, that was up in Lake County, Illinois here. So if you don't think that's happening here, you're wrong.
Oh, speaking of Lake County, thank you. Perfect segue. Eric Reinhardt is the state's attorney in Lake County.
Yeah,
and
the Safety Act.
He and his gal pal, Kim Fox, the two state's attorneys who were proponents of the Pritzker Purge Law, we're trying to do an assessment almost a year in now to its take effect date. And I'm fascinated to watch this effort to say, jail populations have been reduced and crime is down, and so all these sorts of things are just pronouncements. There's no supporting evidence. CWB Chicago attempted to do a piece on that assessment, and what they found, as they reported, is that it's easy to find out how many people on pretrial release are charged with new felonies. It's impossible to find out what percentage of new felonies are committed, allegedly, by people on pretrial release. So it's more sort of half transparency, fun with numbers. Just take whatever the official line is and repeat it and get everybody to serve as an echo chamber. But something Kim Fox said in offering her assessment from her perch as Cook County State's attorney, and I'm sure Reinhardt would ratify this, is that opposition to the so-called Safety Act or the Pritzker Purge Law was racist. People like you or me who opposed the Safety Act, 1.0 or 2.0 or both, were racist. So are 100 of the state's 102 county state's attorneys in the state of Illinois and all those police chiefs and county sheriffs. Everybody's racist who opposed the Purge Law.
Yeah, I've heard that repeated over and over, and it's an offensive statement. I did read the deep dive that CBW Chicago, and I agree. I would say that number that they put at 20% is more like 35 to 40%. And what they're missing, what the proponents of that Safety Act are missing, is the individuals that don't even get, the police don't even get to court. They're only counting the ones that get to the pretrial hearing, right? They passed all these laws that don't allow police to even bring them to the bond court anymore or to bring them to the pretrial. So there's a huge number that's being released right from the police station on a notice to appear. They don't track that number at all. And to think that,
and the reason, sorry to interrupt, but the reason that's happening is because the police know and the states don't even bother. I mean, they're going to be released.
No, right. And you'll be criticized, and the judges will look down and say, do you understand what the law is? This individual, you're taking up our time here. This individual shouldn't even be in front of us. And as far as being racist, I mean, I did a public event recently where I kind of just spoke on the same issue you just talked about. And I said, think about this for you that think that we're racist. There was a study that 87% of the calls that police respond to are initiated by residents, by citizens, no matter where you live. It's not self-initiated police activity. And then we're coming there and the individual's being arrested or we're detaining them, and you're thinking we're racist? We're responding to your constituents. We're responding to the residents that call, who call the police, and if that person happens to be white, African American, Hispanic, we have no control over that. It's such a ridiculous notion that the police have somehow this ingrained racist attitude towards just policing in general. It's offensive and it's not factual.
That's a good point. And just to be clear, when you were saying about the CWB review of the Safety Act that you think it's more like 30 or 35%, you're talking about the percentage of new felonies committed by people on pretrial release. You think it's 30 to 35%.
Oh, without a doubt. But these violent crimes, make no mistake, these violent crimes that we even have to let go from the police facility, it's never their first offense. So any of your listeners that think that somebody picks up a gun and shoots it or murders somebody or even just discharges it in a reckless manner, if that's the first time they did this or the first time they've had police contact, that never is the case, ever.
Thomas Weitzel, retired police chief for the village of Riverside. Tom Weitzel, thanks for joining us again. Appreciate it.
Thank you very much. Have a good morning.
You too, and he joined us on our turnkey.pro answer line.
Connect with Dan and Amy using the AM 560 mobile app. Download it today at 560theanswer.com/mobile.
A healthy fawn may be seen frolicking in